like to introduce therapy as a conversation where we build a safe space and you're validated but also challenged. I like to remind people that everything goes at their pace and that I'm never going to make them talk about or do anything, that it all comes on their terms and at their comfort level. Now, one of the biggest things I like to highlight is that I am never going to tell them what to do, meaning I'm not going to give them advice, but I'm going to support them based on their values and their beliefs. And so that's why in the first session, I'll ask a lot about their identity, their background, what's important to them, different parts of their identity, like, a culture, a religion, a sexual orientation, a community they're a part of. So that for me is a big way to kind of introduce therapy by kind of talking about what we'll do. And then I also remind people that they might come to sessions with a lot to talk about, or they might have no clue, and then I'm happy to follow their lead and give them as much structure or as little structure as they need. At the end of the first session, I'll say, hey, how did you feel about today? If you want to see me again, great, let's schedule. If you don't, that's okay. My priority is that you feel good about the person that you are seeing. The first session can be literally getting to know each other. It doesn't have to be this deep dive. So I like to remind people that the therapist that they're seeing is going to help make them feel at ease, and it can be very introductory. So it might be about hobbies, where you grew up. If some people want to get into lots of detail right away, that's okay too. But the first parts of session is really just creating that connection and that relationship. It's different from going to the doctor where they ask you about all your symptoms and there's no really, let's get to know you as a person. So therapy is very unique and it's very different than, hey, let's talk about the problem right away and get into all the details. Therapy helps us to build insight into what we're going through, because if we try to do it internally just with ourselves, we're going to end up spinning in circles. Everything gets very sticky. By talking about it out loud to someone else, we're able to, as therapists, reflect it back to the person. So I think that's something I like to remind people of is, hey, I'm not here to tell you new information. I'm going to reflect what you are telling me. And a part of therapy is educational of, hey, this is what's going on. But a part of therapy is very much like reflective and observational. So it's, hey, this is what I'm hearing you say. Is this correct? And so it's not going to be based on my opinions. It's going to be a place where you get to have a sounding board and then reflection time and talking about it, of course, with using my expertise. However, I remind people that they are the experts of their experience. So if I make an observation that's inaccurate, they get to tell me that. It's important that they tell me that. So connection is everything. Feeling connected to your therapist is the best predictor of positive outcomes. So with that said, I like to tell people a little bit about me and my identity. And so that way they feel that there's a human connection point. I'm not a robot telling them what to do or anything like that. So I like to talk about how I'm Latina. And for me, a big part of my practice is working with people who are culturally diverse, whether they're Asian, Hispanic, African American, immigrants, international. So I remind people that, hey, I have this foundation. And I'm also not assuming that just because we have a similar cultural experience, that means it's the same, because everybody has a different lived experience. I also like to ask about spirituality and religion. Some people like to bring that into therapy and some people don't, and I will guide them based on that. But if your therapist knows, hey, this is part of my daily life, or hey, this is how my worldview has been shaped, it's important for us to know that so that we can better support you and notice patterns and certain thought processes. And then I do also work a lot with chronic pain and disability. So that's important to share with your therapist too, because if that's a part of your life, it's important for us to know that so that we can guide and support you, knowing, hey, this is going into their thought process of how they structure their day, and these are the accommodations that they use and things like that. So while I do specialize in anxiety, depression, OCD, relationship issues, family dynamics, grief and loss, those are all things that our identities obviously impact these other things. I would say that I'm here to empower them. I don't have the power. We're going to work on empowering each individual person to work towards healing, to use their voice, and to see themselves as the person that they can lean on while seeking support, obviously in the therapy space. So my therapy is unique because I work on reminding my patient, like, hey, you have the skills, you are capable. You never made progress because of me. It was always because of you. You are the one that made these changes. A lot of it is looking at our thought patterns. So there are a lot of parts of our thought processes that are very automatic. But by noticing what these thoughts and the patterns are, we can work on challenging them, because what we can control is what we say back to ourselves. So we want to notice these self-defeating thoughts. They're also called cognitive distortions or thinking traps. We want to notice these patterns and recognize, actually practice distinguishing, separating the feelings and the facts. And by acknowledging what's a feeling and what's a fact, we're able to impact what we say back to ourselves, and then that's going to influence the way that we feel. So that's what we call thought reframing, and that's a big technique that I like to recommend. There's the thought piece, and then we work on actions. Actions might be doing things like behavior activation, talking about how we incorporate body movement. Maybe it's incorporating deep breathing, yoga. Everybody's different, but we kind of use I use every person's kind of interests differently so that I can give them therapy challenges based on what interests them and what they feel passionate about. Find your safe space. Come with a cup of tea or coffee, hot chocolate, a pillow, fuzzy socks, have a candle going, essential oils. Make it a space physically where you feel safe, so that way when we meet virtually, that extends. And so, and I will also make it safe too, because the nice thing about virtual therapy is that we can work on what a safe space feels like for you. If we're in a physical office, the office is the way it is. The walls are the way they are, the setup is the way it's there. But if we're meeting virtually, then we can talk about how to create your safe space so that your virtual therapy feels more inviting to you. I speak a few languages. That's very important for me. And so I like to target towards Spanish speakers and Italian speakers. I am fluent in English, Spanish, and Italian. And so part of my practice is making sure that I am culturally aware, but also linguistically aware. So I want people to know, hey, sometimes, yes, we express ourselves in our home language. So the languages I speak, like I said, are English, Spanish, and Italian. But if someone also speaks Mandarin or Gujarati or Hindu or anything, right? Like if they have certain words that they want to use in sessions, I want them to be able to use that. And yes, they might have to tell me at first what those mean, but then certain words might come up and they might say, and I know what they're referring to. So I want people to feel very true to themselves. Even if that means I do some learning on my part, that's totally fine. I should be able to do this. Or I should be able to do this on my own, or this shouldn't be a problem, right? Like these should statements that say that somehow we're supposed to have it figured out. That's a big one. Absolutely. Self-improvement and personal growth are everything. And even if everything in your life is perfect, it's still really nice to have someone that talks to you for an hour and is only focused on you. Their job is to be aware of what you need and what's going on. And why not? I like to say that I'm a therapist that goes to therapy, and I will always go to therapy because I'm a human and there's a lot that goes on in the world. And so it's important. You don't have to wait until there's a problem. You can go to build insight and have a self-care dedicated space for yourself to talk about you.